Krishna, thank you very much for inviting me again to continue where we left off last time. We'll start with a quick prayer and then go straight to the subject matter. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we were discussing chapter number 14 of the sixth canto, and the sixth canto is titled Poshana Leela. Poshana means grace, the grace of the Lord, and it is in fact one of the most important cantos in so many ways. It establishes the glories of Raganuga Bhakti. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. So we were discussing this episode where we saw so far. Let's go back what we saw. So we saw that Citraketu Maharaj, well, initially we saw how Parikshit Maharaj is confused. How can Vitrasur be a devotee of the Lord? He is Papmanaha. He is actually a demoniac person. Rajastamaha Swabhavasya. He has the Swabhava, the nature of being passionate and ignorant. How can he become a devotee? Then Parikshit Maharaj continues to show how rare it is to be a devotee of the Lord. And we find Shukdev Goswami narrating Citraketu Maharaj's pastime, starting with how he was a king of Shurasena and he had 10 million wives. Shurasena is in central India. In fact, the capital of Shurasena is Mathura. So this is where Citraketu Maharaj was. And now he had 10,000 wives, but none of the wives could give him a prince or any children for that matter, a boy or a girl. And I just mentioned that, some scholars believe Bhagavatam was written in 300 BC because Megasthenes, in his book Indica, which is no longer available actually, he mentions about Surasena and Mathura. So he, because he mentions it, the Indologists think, well, and Bhagavatam mentions it, so that's the coincidence, which means Bhagavatam was written around 300 BC. But anyway, we then saw Angira Muni arrive on the scene asking Citraketu Maharaj, what is the problem? Are you happy? Is your health okay? And then there are some very nice conversations about what a king should do, how governance works. And these were some of the very beautiful verses. In gist, everything about good governance is mentioned, on how to manage a complex, like a temple or a government or a institution, business. All of that can be looked at from this perspective. So we've done that. I don't want to repeat it. And then Angira senses the anxiety, and Chitraketu Maharaj replies, I'm not pleased because I don't have a son. I have everything, but I don't have a son. And then he says, I need a son so that the son can perform tarpan. And if he performs tarpan, then me, along with all the forefathers, will be redeemed. We then saw very briefly what it takes for one to go to Yamaloka and all of the different elements of Yamaloka. And we saw how we can, save ourselves as well. And then we heard that Harsha Shoka will be born And Angira performs a yajna actually to satisfy Twashta. And once Twashta is satisfied with the offering of rice, that rice maha is given to Citraketu Maharaj, and Angira Muni says, please offer this to your oldest or eldest and the most favorite queen. So he offers it to Kritadyuti, and she, of course, becomes pregnant. And Angira says, Harsha Shoka Pradastubhyam, you will attain son who will be Harsha Shoka for you. He doesn't say his name will be Harsha Shoka, he just says, Harsha Shoka Pradastubhyam, you will get Harsha Shoka. So Chitraketu Maharaj thinks, well, my son will be very powerful, probably more powerful than me, and as a result of that, sometimes he might give me some trouble, but better have a son than not have a son. Kritaditi becomes pregnant after eating the remnants of the yagya, and a son is born, and they name him Harshashoka. And the residents are very happy. Chitraketu is very happy, and he engages all the brahmanas for Jatakarma ceremony. So we saw what the 16 samskaras are and what Jatakarma is, right? And how Jatakarma was performed is also mentioned in this verse. So we saw how Bhagavatam gives everything. There is no need to go outside of Bhagavatam for anything. Then we saw how Chitraketu Maharaj is so keen to give donations that he donates approximately 60 million cows. And I was mentioning that the total number of cows in all of the UK is 3.1 million. And also the numeric system, while when the Romans were still scribbling on stones, in India we had 10 to the power 99. Those many, that complex of mathematics. In fact, the world has received 0 from India. So we can see here the mention of multiplication and also, oh, my pen isn't working for some reason. It's working. Okay. We can see multiplication and high numbers. Arbudani. Arbuda means 10 million. So after giving, why did he give these donations? Because he was interested in 3 things for his son. Dhanyam, Yashasyam, Ayusham. 3 things. Long life, fame, and fortune. For Kumarasya Mahamana. Kumarasya, of the son of the prince. Now we are continuing that discussion, how he was giving away lots of gifts to the Brahmanas. And then what happens? His feeling is like this. And this is a very interesting verse that is mentioned. Krichra labdhet rajarshe tanayenu dinam pituhu. Krichra labdhe. Krichra. For some reason, my pen has a delay. Can you still see it? Are you able to? Can somebody tell me if you can see it?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Krichra literally means difficulty. So this word Krichra is mentioned twice. Yeah. And Krichra apte. Apte, apta. Apta means, in English, from this Sanskrit word comes the word obtain. Oops. Obtain. Obtain means apta. So Krichra labdhet rajarshe. This Rajarshi, first of all, we find that Chitraketu Maharaj was not ordinary person. He was a Rajarshi. Bhagavatam says he is a Rajarshi. So he's a Rishi. He's a sage. Why is he a sage? Because he surrendered to other sages. This is a simple answer. If somebody wants to become a Rajarshi and he's a king or she is a queen, if they are surrendered to rishis, they become Rajarshis themselves. Simple. So this is a traditional definition of a Rajarshi. Rajarshis are not rishis who go to the forest. They are kings, they are warriors. But they take guidance and they are dependent on the rishis. Like he was dependent on Angira Rishi who visited him. So Krichralabdhe, obtained after a lot of difficulty. Atha Rajarshe Tanaye Nudinam Pituhu. Tanaye, the son which was obtained with a lot of difficulty. Anudinam. Anudinam means dine dine. Dine dine iti anudinam. Day after day by day. Pituhu, the son was becoming day by day dearer to the father. Why? Because he was attained after a lot of difficulty. And the example is given by Shukdev Goswami. Yatha nishvasya krichrapte. When one obtains something that they desire. Nishvasya. Nih means very much. Swa means self. Very much desired by oneself. Whenever one obtains something, krichra, with difficulty, dhane sneho anvavardhata. Anvavardhata. Anu avardhata. It, that sneha, that attachment for that thing which has been obtained with a lot of difficulty, anu avardhata, always increases day by day. The sneha, the attachment for such wealth. So, in simple words, what Bhagavatam is saying is, to the degree you put effort in getting something, and as a reason, as a result of the effort, when you get something, when you obtain something, to the degree you put effort, to that degree proportionate is your attachment. So more effort, more attachment. The more difficult it is to attain something, the more attachment it will give you. So this is the situation with Citraketu Maharaj. He is more attached to his son than anyone or anything else. In fact, he thinks, even if I lose my entire kingdom, I do not care. I have my son. So in life, whenever we are putting a lot of effort into something, a lot of effort into getting a good job, a lot of effort into earning good money, a lot of effort into getting a nice house, a lot of effort into making sure our children get the best of education, the best of um, food on their dinner table, the best of clothes to wear, the best of comforts to live. The more efforts we do to give, to get, and to give, and the more difficulties we go through, to that degree we become attached to those things that have been achieved through hard work. This is Bhagavatam's verdict. This is Shukdev Goswami's verdict. I was speaking to a man recently who in 2001, I met him. I mean, he remembered me. I didn't remember him. And he was telling me he's an English guy. I met him somehow through some contact. And he said, "Oh, you remember you attended that seminar and we were sat next to each other." And I said, "What seminar are we talking about? I mean, I don't even think we met before." He said, "No, definitely met you. We set for this seminar. There was some free seminar in 2004, which is 21 years ago, in central London, in some nice hotel. I don't remember. And it was a free seminar. I thought I'll go along and attend it. It was about how to build a property empire. So this guy Rob, he developed a property empire. He was there in the session. I mean, I didn't. I heard everything, but I didn't act at all. And I have no properties, absolutely nothing, except the one that I live in is also on mortgage. So I don't have a property empire. But this guy actually ended up. He told me he's ended up with 120 properties. He started out in 2003. I didn't do anything. And he's got 120 properties just around London, in and around London. Haribol? Yeah, if you can if you can be on mute, please. Yeah. Anyway, just my point is, when I asked him, so how, okay, that's wonderful, I'm happy for you, etc. And then I asked him how his health was, because I could see he was not sounding very good. He said, well, I'm fighting with cancer. I'm fighting cancer at the moment, some colon cancer. So I said, well, I really pray for you and wish you well. And, maybe you should refocus and look after your health and prioritize that. And he said, yeah, it's hard. And I said, well, why is it hard? Because he's been through a lot. And he gave me a lot of details anyway. So the bottom line is, he said, I just cannot get rid of any of the properties. I just cannot, because I worked so hard for them, so hard, that now it's not possible for me to relinquish anything. And he was. I asked him, where are you going now? And he said, I'm on my way to view another property. Here's a man who's dying, well, literally, and he's on his way to view another property. It reminds me of a nice story that Siddhanta Sri Thakur said. A king went with his minister to, to the lakes, to just have a nice time with nature. And as they were rowing, just him and the minister, as the minister was rowing the boat, they were in the middle of the lake. The king didn't know how to swim. The minister knew how to swim, but the king didn't know how to swim. And as fate would have it, for some reason, it became very windy, and then the boat started to rock. And the rocking boat toppled the king over, and the king fell into the lake, and he didn't know how to swim. So he was drowning. And yet, when he fell without his crown, because he was a bit relaxed on the boat. So he'd put his crown on the side, his bow and arrow on the side. And as he was drowning, he shouted out to the minister, actually extended his hand out and said, come on, I'll grab you. Hold my hand. And he said, you fool, don't you understand I'm the king? Put that crown on my head first before you do anything else. And a huge 30-kilo gold crown. The minister put the crown on the king's head, and then you can guess what happened next. So when he was literally drowning, he couldn't think of anything but the crown. So this was Citraketu Maharaj's situation. He had put so much effort, and with so much difficulty had he had the son. After trying, to get a son through 10 million wives. Bhagavatam says the exact number, 10 million. And like I mentioned last time, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they write in their commentaries, each and every one of those 10 million women were barren. Because the issue could have been with Citraketu, or it could have been with the women. In his fortune, in his faith, in his karma, there was no children. So no matter what he did to change his karma, it didn't until Angira gave him that special blessing because he really, really wanted it. So this is a very important verse. Bhagavatam is sprinkled with these really beautiful nuggets of reflective, real life, practical siddhantas, principles that we can reflect on and which will help us reset in our heads the priorities for our life. And this is one such verse. I spent way too much on it, so I'll pick up the pace. The co-wives were, of course, agitated. Agitated by what? Sapatninam prajakamajvaro bhavat. Prajakamajvaro bhavat. They did not have any child. And because they did not have child, they had even more desire ever than before to have a child. Like two neighbors, both of them want to buy a new Mercedes-Benz car. And they keep talking to each other. Oh, I think I'm going to buy a new car. And one fine day, one of the neighbors sees the other one's actually bought it. When he sees the other one's actually bought it, the fire in his heart becomes even more stronger. It's like the fever. It reaches a feverish pitch. Sometimes there's competition. Competition can reach a feverish pitch. And jwara literally means fever. The ja in Sanskrit changes to fa, and jwara became fever, which became fever. So actually the word fever comes from jwara. So here Bhagavatam says, Sapatninam prajakama jwaro bhavat. They became so mad with discontent that they developed this feverish pitch, like, not being able to tolerate. And Citraketu, to make it even worse, neglected all those wives. So the wives were even more, feeling more guilty. So what were the wives feeling? See, this is what one feels when one experiences neglect from someone who supposedly loves you, who supposedly has a relationship with you. When the relationship goes cold, it could be with our children, our parents, our brothers, siblings, spouses, with anyone, with a work colleague, with some acquaintance. And if it really, really hurts, which is what happened to the queens, there's another very interesting thing. It says, Ta pariyatapyan, pari atapyan. They became completely, atapyan means both angry as well as intolerant, burning, literally. They were burning within. Why were they burning and what were they doing? So these are the three stages. When one loses something, like loses the love of a loved one, or favor of a friend, or wealth which was attained with a lot of effort, something we lose. First, ghariyan, gharayanto, gharayantyo. Abhyasuyaya. Abhyasuyaya means with envy. Asuya means envy. Garhayantaha means they started to blame themselves. It is our fault. They felt guilty. We must have done something wrong. They went into negation, negative thinking. First, when something happens which is not, I don't know what's going on. Okay. Yeah. Because of envy of the wife who had a child, Kritadyuti, they start feeling negative. Anapatyena abhyasuyaya. Anapatyena, because they did not have apatya. Apatya means child. So they became envy. And out of envy, they became negative in their thinking. You see, even we as devotees, we may look at other people's children. I had one mother that I know. She's a wonderful devotee. And her daughter is also a very wonderful devotee. Absolutely lovely child. And I asked her once how she was doing, how the child was doing, how was she? And she said, Prabhu, I want to confide in you that, when I look at other mothers and other children, they are so much better. Now, if you feel that way, it's okay, because the way you respond is more important. You could respond by saying, well, this is what I'm going to learn from them and adopt. Or you could respond by becoming negative. We always have a choice. Even if we genuinely think that we are at fault, even if we have a guilt of some sort, we have a choice. Choice is never taken away. These queens, garhayantyo abhyasuyaya anapatyena dukkhena. And then, after negative thinking, what happens? You feel dukkha, you feel the grief. So, first comes the guilt. My screen isn't behaving itself today. First comes the guilt, then comes the grief. Rajnascha anadarena cha. And to make it worse, to make the guilt even worse and the grief even more pronounced, Rajnaha, the king, Citraketu, anadarena cha. He was completely disregarding these queens, these 10 million queens. He was disregarding them. 10 million minus 1. Kritadyuti he wasn't disregarding. And because he was disregarding all these queens, anadarena, he was not respecting. He was naturally, as a father, attracted to the son and to the mother, who was the mother of the son. So it was not so much of the acharyas explain, it was not so much directed towards these 10 million queens, but in fact it was positively directed to the son, Harshashoka, and his mother, Kritadyuti, which was intolerable for these queens. So when one has guilt and that reaches to a level of grief, when one feels that what they possessed is gone, the goneness, which is the last step, then one completely loses one's composure. And it happens. And so these queens, they start condemning. condemning themselves. Dik aprajam striyam papam. We are actually sinful, papa. That is why we are apraja. We have no children. Dik means, may we suffer. Patyuscha griha sammatam. Patyuscha agriha sammatam. And we are not able to gain any favor from our husband because we have not been able to do anything for him. Suprajabhi sapatnibhir. And the queen who has the son, who has the child, dasimiva tiraskritam. She considers us as if iva, dasi, a maidservant. We have just become like a maidservant for the queen who has given birth to the prince. So they are thinking that these 10 million, they are thinking that we have become the servant of the queen who is the mother, Kritadyuti, her servant, her maid servant. In fact, the next verse they say, and in the eyes of the king considers the queen to be subservient to him, because the queen, in a sense, is serving the king. And these 10 million are serving that queen. So from the eyes of the king, dasya dasiva durbhaga. We are unfortunate, durbhaga, so unfortunate that we are considered to be the servant of the servant. You might have heard these words, servant of the servant. We all are aspiring to be the servant of the servant of the master of the gopis. Gopi bhartuhu padakamalayho dasa dasa anudasa. This is what we are aspiring to be. And yet we see that in material consciousness, it's impossible. It's impossible to become a servant or servant of the servant. I mean, so many examples. King Kulshekhar says, Twadbhrutya bhritya paricharaka bhritya bhritya bhrityasya bhritya iti mam smara lokanatha. Consider me to be the servant of 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 your servants. That's what he says. But material consciousness, you cannot serve. Not truly serve. True service means service till the time the master says, it's enough, you can stop now. That service attitude we cannot easily attain with material consciousness. So they are condemning themselves. Oh, we have been reduced from being the queens of Citraketu to being ordinary servants, maid servants. In fact, from the king's perspective, we are just the servant of the servants. Chanakya Pandit says that when a wife, and they become the 10 million queens, they became extremely vocal, started taunting each other and then taunting the king and the queen. Chanakya Pandit says, Mata yasya grihe nasti. One who does not have a mother in his house, a motherly figure in his house. Bharya cha priyavadini. And one has a bharya, a wife, who is apriyavadini, who is always giving back. Apriya. Apriya means something which is not palatable. Vadini, who is always speaking very harsh words. Such house. Aranyam tena gantavyam. Such a person should go to the forest. Chanakya Pandit says. Why should he go to the forest? Yatharanyam tatha griham. Because forest and house, no difference. Because in the forest also there is no motherly love. And also in the forest, you have all kinds of animals howling, crying, all kinds of um, challenges to face. And if this is the situation in the house, then the house is like forest. You better go to the forest. It might be more peaceful. This is what Chanakya Pandit says. So these queens had become apriyavadini. Now please understand this. Try to understand. Dharma is very interesting. Everyone has their dharma. Now, dharma here I am not referring to dharma as our eternal duty, which is to serve Krishna. That is there, but then we also have multiple hats. We are a father or a mother, we are a son or a daughter, we are a husband or a wife. So, brother or sister. So, there are multiple dharmas that we have to, multiple duties that we have to perform. And dharma is interesting because dharma is always to be understood from the perspective of self. What I mean by that is, if you have to consider whether something must be done or not done, it does not depend on the other person or other people. Let me give you an example. And again, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave this story of a sage who was on the bank of the Ganga, and he saw a Scorpio drowning in the Ganga, in the river currents. And immediately he grabbed the Scorpio. And as soon as he would grab the Scorpio would bite him. And with a sting, the hands of the sage would open and the Scorpio would fall off. And as soon as the Scorpio would fall off back into the water, again the sage would pick up the Scorpio. And again he would bite. And again the Scorpio would fall in the water. And some passerby who was observing what was going on. He approached the sage. Finally, the sage was able to get the Scorpio out and put him on the bank, and the Scorpio ran away. And the passerby couldn't resist, so he asked, why were you doing what you were doing? And the sage said, well, I wasn't doing anything special. I was just following my dharma. But the Scorpio was biting you all the time. And he said, that's all right. The Scorpio was following his dharma, which is to bite. Abraham Lincoln, he spoke in America in one of the houses, as in one of their parliaments. He spoke and he said, if a dog runs behind you, runs after you, and bites you, do you run behind the dog to bite him? Of course you don't, because it's not your dharma to bite the dog. So if somebody is failing to perform their dharma in a relationship, so one to many or one to one must not take that as a validation that they can go away from their dharma. Because to the degree one moves away from one's own dharma, to that degree one gets karmic reactions of performing adharma. When you move away from dharma, you are in the zone of adharma. So here, for example, it says bharya cha priyavadini. Now, most of the wives might think, well, I've got a husband who is for lack of a better word, he's a difficult character. Let's put it that way, to put it very mildly. He's a difficult character. How am I going to be a sweet, always speaking good words and calm. It's not possible. So I will give him back. He gives me 5 words, I will return with 50 words. Well, that's fine. It's a choice. But in doing so, we are not following our dharma. And similarly, men also have their dharma. And if they're not following their dharma, then they are on the path of adharma. Women not following their dharma is path of adharma. So for both men and women. But what one cannot say, what I'm trying to say here is, one cannot justify because the other person isn't following their dharma, because the Scorpio is biting me, I will not pick the Scorpio up anymore. It is my dharma to do uddhara of all living entities, the sadhu said. And it's the Scorpio's dharma to bite and sting. So this is a very interesting thing. That's why when you interact with others, do not necessarily impulsively give back in multiplication sometimes. Let the other person not perform their dharma. That will be their doing, and it will be their results to reap. So anyway, we'll move on. But these are nice things. Now, these queens whose dharma was to serve their husband and to enjoy the kingdom. That's also dharma, to enjoy the kingdom. If you're a queen, you have to enjoy. But instead, their minds were going in the wrong direction. And this is how envy starts in a person. Bhagavatam is so perfect that it speaks complicated, complex things in the most simplest of fashions. And Srila Prabhupada said many times, in fact, there's a professor who would come to Srila Prabhupada in California and sometimes argue with Prabhupada. And he would say, Prabhupada would say something, and then he would say something like, the professor would reply, Swamiji, in my opinion, that's not exactly correct because it's not how things happen. So, in my opinion, it's you don't understand things. You don't understand the word. And Srila Prabhupada at one point just interjected and said, in your opinion, what is the value of your opinion? He's a big professor, and Srila Prabhupada just kind of tore him down, tore him apart by saying, what is the value of your opinion? And just so that he doesn't misunderstand Prabhupada, he said, what is the value of my opinion? Prabhupada said, we do not accept anyone's opinion. We only accept Krishna's opinion. So Srila Prabhupada was very clear. And another time Prabhupada said, no more research needs to be done. In a small book called Life Comes to Life, Prabhupada, in one of the conversations with Dr. Thodam Singh, who later on became Bhakti Swarup Damodar Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada says, we do not need to do any further research. All research has been done in the Vedic scriptures. We simply need to follow them. So we see here in this verse, very, in a very compact manner, it's been described how envy takes roots. Evam sandahyamananam, thus burning, sandahyamana, burning, present active participle in Sanskrit, burning, ing, is active. So thus burning, their hearts burning, sapatnya putra sampada, their hearts were burning because they saw the sampada. You have a word sampatti, wealth. They saw putra sampada. They saw this wife, Kritadyuti, has a son. She has wealth that we don't have. So, what causes envy? The first cause of envy is the lack of possession that someone has and we don't have. So, the lack of possessions that somebody has and we don't have. But that's not the only cause of envy. Radnyo asammatta vrittinam. Radnyo asammata vrittinam. Vritti means behavior. Asammata means negligent. Let's put it this way. The king's negligent behavior towards them. So the other thing that causes envy is the presence of behavior which is negligent. When one experiences indifference, negligence from someone, negative behavior, and a desire to possess what the other person possesses, this combination, dvesho balavan abhut, abhut became dvesha, vidvesha balavan abhut. The envy became very strong. So it's almost like if you were to make a graph to the degree of negligence one faces and to the degree of possession one the other person possesses. I don't know, the pen doesn't seem to be working for some strange reason. Okay, yeah. To that degree, one will experience envy. So one should understand the feeling of envy is sandayyamananam. You feel warm. In fact, medical science confirms that when one feels jealous, envious, angry, upset, guilt, one actually feels the temperature of the body actually rises in the fight or flight response. The temperature rises. So literally, but even figuratively, evam sandayamananam, they're feeling they were burning. Why? Because the other person, Kritadyuti, had a sampada, had a wealth that they didn't have. And there was a behavior from them, from Kritadyuti and the king, which was not palatable to them. When these combinations happen, envy becomes really strong. And what happens when one is envious? One loses all intelligence. The effects of envy. 3 stages. First thing, vidvesha. Envy is so powerful. It's a very powerful force. It's a very powerful, active force. Although it's in the negative domain, it's very powerful because it makes one act in the most unreasonable manner. Vidvesha nashtamatayah. First thing, intelligence lost. Nashtamatayah. Striyo daruna chetasah. One becomes hard-hearted. Daruna means hard. Chetasah means heart, of hard heart. The queens became hard-hearted. Nashtamatayah. The intelligence was lost. Garam daduhu kumaraya. Garam means poison. Daduhu, they gave. Plural. They all conspired together. All 10 million of them. And gave garam, which is poison, to Kumara, to the son, to the prince. And this poison killed the son. Durmarsha Nrupatim Prati. Now, just imagine the same husband that they actually desired love from. Nripati means the king. The king from whom they actually desired some affection, these 10 million queens. And in fact, they were upset because they were not getting affection from the king. Towards the same king, Durmarsha, they became extremely intolerant. The king would even give them a smile, they would not smile back. This is what envy does. You have a face off with the other person. First, it starts with your intelligence being completely lost. Nashta, destroyed. Nashtamati, matayaha. This is plural because the verse is talking about so many queens, 10 million of them. Striyo, daruna chetasaha, hard-hearted, means no more will those sentiments which existed previously, no more will those sentiments exist. I mean, many times we can all experience this in our relationships. Nashta matayaha, daruna chetasaha. Ultimately, third stage, durmarsha, completely indifferent, intolerant, in fact. They could not see the sight of the king, the same king that they actually loved. They did not, they could not tolerate even seeing him. That propelled them to act in the most immoral, most adharmic manner of killing an infant, infanticide. Infanticide is a, even in legal terms, even in modern day, it's legally such a uh, unpardonable offense, and they all conspired to kill the child. Kritaditi, who was completely unaware of what was going on, the child, of course, drank the poison and died. Supteveti sanchintya, she was thinking, Supta eva, that my son is sleeping. He's in, he must be tired. Kritaditi then called out the son and said, Come on, wake up. Your friends are here to play with you. And she asked the maidservant, Can you go and wake him up and bring him, please? Putram anaya me bhadre. Oh, Bhadra. Bhadra means, oh, auspicious lady. Kritaditi is referring to the maidservant. One of the acharyas says she was actually, because the word Bhadra is referred here, which means auspicious, like Subhadra, auspicious. Because Bhadra is referred here, she's actually asking one of the co-wives, uh, one of his queens, Citraketu Maharaj's queens, one of the 10 million queens. Kritaditi is asking one of the other queens, co-wives, Putram anaya me bhadre iti dhatrim achodayat. Achodayat, she inspired, she instructed. Dhatrim. Dhatri means a maidservant. So that Acharya comments, he says that she considered these other co-wives as maidservants, practically. But she spoke in a nice, kind manner. In any way, whoever it was that she asked to bring the child, let's say it was the maidservant went and she realized that the son is actually dead. She screamed immediately, instinctively. She started crying and beating her chest. Kritadyuti came running. She asked, What's happened? There was no words to be heard. She realized the son is gone. She fainted, being so distraught. She just fainted. Citraketu Maharaj came running. Practically all of the members of the palace came running, and they all quickly realized what had transpired. While this happened, the queens who had performed this heinous crime, Agatya Tulya Vyasana Sudukhita, Sudukhidaha. They also pretended to be extremely sorrowful. Tulya vyasanaha. Equally sorrowful as Kritadyuti. Tascha Vyalikam. Vyalikam is an interesting word. Vyalikam means fake. Tascha Vyalikam Rurudu Krutagasaha. Rurudu, they, they cried torrents and rivers of tears. Who cried? The 10 million queens. Vyalikam, fake crying. Why fake crying? Krutagasaha. Agasaha, offense. Krita, they did. They had done the offense of killing the sun. So what they were doing was only a pretend cry. Oh, it's 9 p.m. I'm going to be very quick now. Maybe 5-10 minutes more. Queen Kritadyuti speaks about the childishness of Brahma. Some acharyas say she was actually accusing not Brahma, but she was accusing Krishna himself. Aho vidhatas tvamativa balisho. Oh vidhata, oh creator, tvamativa balisho. Balisho means you're so childish, you're such a fool. Yastvatma shrishti apratirupamihase. Yaha tu atma shrishti apratirupam ihase. You are acting in a way which is opposite to the way the creation works. Apratirupam. Pratirupam means in line with how creation works. Apratirupam means opposite to how creation works. Atma means your own creation. Oh creator, you seem to be a fool because you are acting in a way which is opposite to how the creation works. Why is it opposite to how the creation works? So in the creation, you have the cause and then you have the effect. Now the effect can become a cause and you may have another effect. And this effect can become a cause and you might have another effect, right? So this is how the creation works. Now imagine the cause is the father, the effect is the son. The son may become a father again and may have another son again. So that should be the way the creation works. Now, in Kritadyuti's mind, that is also the way in which the creation should shut down, or in other words, death should happen. So the father should die before the son. So she is thinking that's how it should happen. How could the son die before the father? Parenu jivati. One is parenu jivati aparasya yamriti. The one who appeared later has already died. The one who appeared before is still living. How is that possible? Aparyayaschetvam aridhruva para. Aparyayaschetvam. If this is how you act, opposite to the standard logic, then you are certainly our Ari. Ari means enemy. Dhruvaha, certainly. Paraha. Chetvam. Tvam, you are certainly our enemy. You are not God. You are not the creator. You are an enemy. Because you are killing the son in front of his father, his mother. So you are certainly an enemy. She is a mother, so she is speaking out of emotions. But it's beautiful because this philosophy that she's talking is called as Karma Mimamsa philosophy, which was propounded by Jaimini Rishi. We will have a quick look at that. We won't have time to go through it. But I do want to tell you, and Srila Prabhupada in the purports, if you read this chapter, he, at least a couple of times, he quotes this verse from Brahma Samhita in his purports, saying that yes, one must understand yastvendra gopam athavendram Aho Swakarma. Whether you are Indragopa, which is the name of a very small insect, which is size of this dot on the screen. That's the size of Indragopa. In India, you can see these insects. Sometimes these insects also on a pea pod. You know, peas, green peas. Inside the pea pod, we open it, and you see these red dots. That's Indragopa insect. I mean, I've never seen it in the UK, but if it's fresh produced from the farm, maybe, and the farm that doesn't use any fertilizers, you might see actually when you open it, there's sometimes caterpillars, sometimes, these red dots, which are Indragopa, small insect. Brahma Samhita says, Lord Brahma says, Yastvindragopam athavendram athava indram. Indragopam athava indram. Whether it is Indra or Indragopa, Indra you all know, the king of heaven. Aho Swakarma. How do they get to live their lives? Swakarma bandha anurupa phala. Bhajanam. Bhajanam, they experience. Phala, result. Anurupa, according to. Bandha, the bondage. Swakarma, of their own karma. They experience the results according to the bondage or the actions that they have had of their own karma, previous karma. Atanoti, they achieve, or it's spread. Who gives this result of karma? Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. But then there's a very nice clause here, which is very important. Karmani nirdahati. But these karmic reactions, which one was meant to get, nirdahati, is completely burnt. Like hay is completely burnt in fire, all the karmic reactions are completely burnt. Kintu cha bhakti bhajam. Please remember, try to understand. One who performs bhakti, all these karmic reactions get burnt. One who does not perform bhakti, for them, swakarma bandha anurupa phala bhajanam, they will get karmic reactions according to the karmas that they have performed. So, in Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says, understand this. Karmano hi api bodhavyam. Bodhavyam, one must understand. He says bodhavyam 3 times in this verse. The only verse in Bhagavad Gita where he says bodhavyam 3 times. The only verse. Karmano hi api bodhavyam. One must know very clearly what is karma. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. One should know what is vikarma. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. One must know what is akarma. And one must act accordingly to karma. One must avoid karma and vikarma, and one must perform a karma. Both karma and vikarma will give you positive and negative results. But we don't want any further bondage. Then you perform a karma. Gahana karmano gati. Krishna himself is telling Arjuna, the way karma works is gahana, mysterious. One cannot say, I slapped you today, therefore in my next life you will slap me. No, it doesn't work like this. It's not a algebraic equation, and it doesn't work like a linear equation. It's more, it's much more complex than that. So Kritadyati, in her upsetness, she gives a series of arguments. And there is a response. The son must not have died before the father. And the response is, well, there are no absolute natural laws like these. One dies and one is born according to karma, not according to the sequence of birth. Kritadyati says, well, If karma is all causing everything, birth, death, then what is the need for God? Who cares about God? Why do we need God? Everything's going on according to karma. This is how most Indians think. Just keep doing your karma and you'll get everything. Live an atheistic life, do good karma. And how do you know what is good, what is bad? Whatever feels good is good karma. Whatever feels bad is bad karma. If you're a thief looting a bank, it's good karma. So um, it's on very shaky grounds. But she is saying, if karma is going to give you results, why do we need God? Why do you need you, Mr. Creator? And he says, well, karma only acts as a law, acts in a kingdom. The law does not mean the king doesn't need to exist. It's the king whose law is being acted upon in the kingdom. So karma needs a controller. Karma in itself, law in itself is not powerful enough. The lawmaker is there and the law executioners are there. So karma needs a controller. And then she objects, well, I don't still get it that why, okay, I see that you are needed. But then why would you create affection and increase that affection if this affection is going to be whimsically disturbed? The affection between a mother and a child, a father and a child, if that's going to be whimsically disturbed by something like karma, why do you even allow that kind of affection? Isn't it silly that you allow it? So the response is, well, affection is just natural. But all the affection that you are saying should not be broken is because you are assuming that this world is a permanent place and the relationships are permanent. The reality is they are not permanent anyway. Even if your son would have died after you had died, the affection would have been broken. So the logic doesn't hold. This world is temporary. All the relationships are temporary. And hence, the affection which is natural is also temporary. And then she accuses the Lord of being incompetent. Since you cut down the bonds of affection arbitrarily, you are inexperienced, unintelligent. And Krishna says, well, actually, karma will act whether you understand it or not. You may not understand why your son has died, but that's because you can't see the bigger picture across many lifetimes. So we learn this, and then, so this is the philosophy of karma mimamsa. I want to skip some screens. Srila Prabhupada says very clearly that one must know the philosophy of these six philosophers. Ashtavakra is a Mayavadi. Gautama, Kanhada, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, and Ashtavakra. And then Prabhupada makes a very bold statement. He says, and this is right at the beginning, first canto, first chapter, verse number 7 purport. He makes an extremely bold statement. He says, one can sit on the Vyasasana only after being conversant in all systems of philosophy. Which is all systems? All of these six systems, the six different philosophical systems, so that one can present fully the theistic views of the Bhagavatam in defiance of all other systems. Srila Sutta Goswami was a proper teacher, and therefore the sages at Naimisharanya elevated him to the Vyasasana. So he gives eligibility for sitting on the Vyasasana. One has to be mastering all the six systems of Vedic philosophy. Of course, nowadays it would be quite a feat to even be able to name the proponents of each one of the six systems, or even name the six systems, let alone having a thorough understanding of each of those. But yes, I'll skip that. I will skip this. Ultimately, Kritadyuti laments. She calls her son and she accepts that he's dead. Citraketu laments. Angira arrives with Narada. This is the last verse, and we finish here. Angira and Narada, they arrive, verse number 61. Evam kashmalam apannam, having attained this kashmala, misery, seeing them in such a miserable state, Narada with his friend Angira, they both arrive. Nashta sanyam anayakam. Nashta sanyam, they had completely lost consciousness, complete understanding of who they are. Jnatva Angira Nama Rishi, knowing that Angira Nama Rishi, Rishi Angira, Ajagama Sanaradaha, along with Narada, Angira arrived there. And that finishes this chapter. In the next chapter, you will see what conversation happens between Angira and Citraketu Maharaj. And as a result of that, there is a very wonderful exchange, very potent exchange that you should all study and remember and meditate on. I'll stop here. Sorry, I took about 12, 14 minutes more. I'll take any comments, questions, or corrections very briefly before we close the call. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Granth-raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Ki
jai.
Jai. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu. We'll just take one or two questions if that's okay for tonight.
Yeah.
Atul Prabhu, would you like to ask your first question, please?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just a quick one. As you told, according to the purport, that Ashtavakra was a Mayavadi. So, what does Mayavadi means? Because I have really heard that thing about Shankaracharyas and everything. So, what does Mayavadi means?
I mean, it's not a quick question, but Mayavad is essentially a philosophy where Mayavadis consider themselves to be Brahman, to be the supreme. There is no becoming supreme, you are the supreme. But you have forgotten because of Maya that you are the supreme. That's in one line what Mayavadis are.
That's okay.
So you
That's
are
okay.
Krishna, but you've forgotten that you're Krishna. And I'm also Krishna, and everyone on this call is Krishna, and every living entity is Krishna. And this whole world is just, it's just phantasmagoria, which is just a dream. This world is not real. This world is just a dream.
Yeah.
Now, the correct understanding is we are not Krishna. We are Krishnas. We are the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. And this world is not a dream. It's not unreal. It is real, but it's temporary. Something that's temporary can still be real. Yeah. So the clouds in the sky are real, but they're temporary. So what's temporary may appear to be unreal, but it's real. This world is real. We are real, and we are individual entities, and we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we are his eternal servant in our identity, in our relationship with him. That's the correct understanding according to the Vaishnava Acharyas. All right.
Rajesh Prabhu, would you like to ask a question? And we'll stop at Vijay Krishna Prabhu as the last question, if that's okay. Thank you.
Amazing class questions, Prabhu, but I'll get to the question. So something I've been wondering for a long, long time, it's probably more, maybe it's on the material or mental platform. You know, when we have such wonderful personalities where their names reflect their characteristics, like Rosh Hashanah, when the characteristics are negative, how would my mind struggles to understand? They know that the meaning of their name, and when they were having this pastime and living, and their name relates to their pastime, you know, my mind struggles to understand how they.
Yes, I mean, if you take the example of Harsha Shoka, well, I mean, it all depends on the name. The meaning is there, but the interpretation of the meaning all depends on who the person is that is listening to the name. For instance, when Citraketu heard the word Harsha Shoka, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, and I already mentioned in the last class, in his mind, he translated Harsha means this boy will give me a lot of happiness. Shoka means sometimes I'll be upset with him because he'll be too naughty because he's my only child. So he couldn't think beyond that, right? Same with, let's say, Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra means one, Dhrita means to hold, and Rashtra means the kingdom, one who holds the kingdom. And he thought, and his advisors told him, you're the one who will hold the kingdom together. You're the one who will be the positive force behind this kingdom. But the reality of the word Dhritarashtra is that he is so reluctant to give up his position that he, no matter what, even if it is adharma, he wants to see his son Duryodhana be the next king. That is why he's holding on to his seat. Dhritarashtra, he's holding on to his kingdom, not giving up. He could have relinquished. He could have avoided the whole war, Kurukshetra war, by just saying, well, Yudhishthir, you are the eldest amongst the descendants. So according to rule of law, according to dharma, it's natural. The eldest sibling gets the kingdom, and you're the eldest, so you should get it. And it could have finished. But he held on. Dhritarashtra, he held on. Didn't want to give it to anyone but his son. So the meanings are all dependent on, you know, what the interpretation is in the mind of the person whose name it is and their advisors, right? So
Thank you.
All right, should we Vijay Krishna Prabhu? It's a quick one.
Yes, Kartick Prabhu, why is it that in accordance with Srimad Bhagavatam, so much is required from the speaker for him to sit on the Vyasasana and speak?
Why is it? Because it's very simple. You can only give what you possess. So a teacher can only teach as much as he or she is understood and realized. And that's exactly what, before answering the question in Srimad Bhagavatam, we see Suta Goswami is telling all the sages of Naimisharanya, I shall now narrate to you Srimad Bhagavatam, Yathadhitam Yathamatihi. To the degree I have learned and understood, Adhitam, Yathamatihi, and to the degree I have realized it. So it's only, one will only receive from different speakers the depth of the philosophy, the Bhagavatam, for that matter, anything that one needs, only to the degree that they have themselves learned and understood, and to the degree that they have themselves realized. Only to that degree can they give. And hence, the ideal benchmark is for somebody to have really high degree of learning and high degree of realization so that they can give the most.